Great. Okay. So we're going to call this meeting of the TRPA Environmental Improvement Program Committee to order. The date is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026, and the time is 11:47 a.m. The first item on the agenda is the roll call to determine quorum. Maria?
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Here.
Ms. Faustinos, Mr. Guthrow, Ms. Hayes, Ms. Late,
Here.
Mr. Rice,
Here.
Ms. Williamson. She is here. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll go over the remote and in-person meeting rules for the day. So remote committee members, please raise your hand to speak and mute your microphone unless speaking to help cut down on background noise. Please, all remote members, turn on your camera if you're able to do so. And remote members may not use the chat box to make any comments or to have sidebar conversations. If you are viewing the webinar on a personal computer in the room, please ensure that your microphone and speakers are turned off to prevent audio feedback into the room. Members of the public who have joined us in person, please raise your hand at the appropriate time for public comment and you'll be called to the front to speak. Committee members who are in person, please raise your hand if you wish to comment, state your name and speak clearly into the microphone in front of you. If you are viewing the webinar on a personal computer, please ensure that your microphone and speakers are turned off to prevent audio feedback into the room. Okay, the second item on our agenda is the public comment period for any items posted on the agenda. Any member of the public wishing to address the committee on an agenda, please raise your hand. And if you are on Zoom, please click the raise hand button or dial *9 on your phone and you'll be called on. Great. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks. Good morning, Chair, members. Laura Patton from League to Save Lake Tahoe, or Keep Tahoe Blue for the record. I'm going to comment first on item 5C. We'll see on timing for the rest. Just wanted to say that we strongly support the proposed threshold update priorities and really appreciate the work of staff and the continued work to really modernize these foundational standards. The focus on biodiversity, recreation, and addressing standards that really lack measurable targets is really both timely and necessary before the next threshold evaluation. We want to emphasize this isn't just good policy, it's a legal obligation under Article 5 of the Compact to achieve and maintain environmental threshold carrying capacities. And that really only works if the thresholds are measurable, science-based, and really reflective of the current conditions and work not only through staff, but with all of the interagency working groups and the Tahoe Science Advisory Council as well. You know, as highlighted in the 2023 threshold evaluation that many of you have seen, but I know we have some new members, a lot of the standards really lacked. Sorry?
6 hours less.
No worries. The 2023 evaluation really showed that a lot of standards really still lack clear targets or sufficient data. So we're just really happy to support the 2026 and 2027, prioritization of updating these standards in the work plan. And while we strongly support this, we really hope that staff can really view this and the board as well as really part of a broader effort to modernize standards and really update them in an adaptive way as we really try and understand and utilize best available science and climatic conditions in the Tahoe Basin as well. And, outdated and unmeasurable standards really risk undermining the environmental outcomes in the basin and compliance with the compact itself. And happy to continue to work with staff on this. And I will just say on the AIS outreach item, aquatic invasive species are really one of the most immediate and I would say preventable threats to Lake Tahoe. Keep Tahoe Blue and our organization really plays a key role through our Eyes on the Lake programs, training both marinas and the public, educating thousands of people over the last 13 years with that specific program. And last year we launched a new environmental education program with volunteers called the AIS Outreach Team, which really engages the public on non-motorized use, as you'll hear a lot more about today with the threat of golden mussels, We're really, really focused on aquatic invasive species. And I would just say super supportive of not only all of the aquatic invasive species outreach work, but also the other item, the Myers inspection station as well. Aquatic invasive species are not going away, not tomorrow, not in 10 years. So having permanent inspection stations is incredibly important and vital to protection of the basin. So thanks. Well,
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Please state your name for the record. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marlon Charnot, and I am with the California Tahoe Conservancy. I'm the supervisor of the Tahoe Livable Communities Program. And just here to share a comment about item 5B, the AIS station, and that we are obviously a partner agency in this project and obviously very supportive of it. And specifically some of the project design and elements and how tricky it can be, not only obviously AIS and how much of a threat it is to Lake Tahoe, but also, you know, being the Tahoe Livable Communities supervisor, we have our asset lands program, which was established to help support conservation efforts, but also affordability or like sustainable communities. And so that I think the housing, workforce housing element is pretty critical to this project as well. And so we're fully supportive of all these elements that are shown in the design, and will continue to support this project as much as possible. Thank you all.
Anyone else in the room? Okay, and anyone online?
I'll just reiterate for the folks online, if you'd like to comment at this agenda item, please raise your hand now in Zoom by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, or by dialing *9 if you have called in. Madam Chair, there are no hands raised to comment.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll close the comment period and we can move on to approval of the agenda. So that's our next item. Are there any changes to the agenda stuff?
Good morning, Kim Kinder for the record. Just one small change. Mackenzie Cook, who was supposed to give the presentation for the AIS outreach, we are going to have Tom Booz do that presentation since Mackenzie's out sick today. Thank you.
Okay, I'll deem the agenda approved as posted. We're now on to agenda item 4, approval of the minutes. We have a draft set of minutes from the January 28th, 2026 meeting on page 57 of your packet. Does any member of the committee wish to make a change to those minutes? Okay. So seeing not, we can move along to move, sorry. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, thanks. Anyone object? Okay, good. Okay. Oh, you're just sitting here. Sorry. I'm looking at you like you might have comments. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. And I realized we didn't introduce Vince as a new member of the committee, but if you'd like to introduce yourself now, please go ahead.
Sure. I'm Vincent Guthrow. I'm the new director of the Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I started in that role appointed by the governor on March 30th. So I'm taking the committee assignments of my predecessor. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And with that, if there's any recusal on votes because you weren't here, just let us know. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're moving into the main agenda. So we're at agenda item 5A, Myers Watercraft Inspection Station, and information on this item can be found on page 159. So I'll turn this over to Dennis Zabaglo to present to all of us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon or morning still, technically. I'm Dennis Zabaglo. I'm the Aquatic Invasive Species Program Manager for the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. And I'm excited today to talk about the progress we're making towards a permanent location for our Myers Watercraft Inspection Station. Also, we're in the draft environmental document was just released, which is going to, today will also provide an opportunity for the public to have additional opportunities to provide public comment. Next slide, please. Oh, also, I wanted to mention, Marlon is here from the Conservancy, but also Thea Graybill from the county, El Dorado County. They're serving as our project manager, is able to answer any additional questions you may have. First, I just want to kind of briefly talk about aquatic invasive species, their impacts, and what we do to prevent their introduction. They can have devastating impacts on our water quality and water clarity. They outcompete native species, disrupt the food web, the delicate food web of Lake Tahoe. And because all these things live in the nearshore environments of Lake Tahoe, that's where we all engage with the lake. So they can really ruin that recreational and scenic experience. And that can impact our $5 billion tourism recreation-based economy. But fortunately, we have the national model for inspection and decontamination. And so since 2008, we've been doing mandatory inspections and decontaminations, now more recently with a golden mussel to prevent and have successfully kept out invasive mussels since the program began. Next slide. So we did start in 2008. As I mentioned, that was a result of quagga mussels being discovered in Lake Mead in 2007. So we acted very quickly. And that was, I mentioned mandatory, but the first year of our program in 2008 was actually voluntary. We were at all of the boat ramps and launch facilities around the lake, getting things going right away and partnering with the Tahoe Resource Conservation District since the very beginning. They're great staff. As I said, we've been very successful. But right away, we knew doing those inspections at the ramps was not an ideal, sustainable solution. It's kind of chaotic, it's very congested, not a lot of space. And if you've ever been to a boat ramp, sometimes it's described as an episode of divorce court. So we wanted to remove ourselves from that chaos. So in 2010, sometimes, in 2010 and 11, we transitioned to off-ramp locations, but always with that goal of identifying permanent locations for these watercraft inspection stations. Next slide, please. So with the success that I mentioned that we've had with the program, keeping invasive mussels out since we've been doing this program, we've got a lot of funding and support through the states and the federal government and also the public, demonstrating that value of investment because of the success we've had. That led to some additional funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law that has been dedicated towards developing these permanent locations. So we have Spooner on the Nevada side, working with Nevada Department of Transportation and the Tahoe Transportation District and the Forest Service, hopefully getting to breaking ground maybe this year, but more likely next year. So that's really exciting. But now also with Myers, and as Marlon mentioned, the opportunity for asset lands. Those are lands within the Conservancy's ownership, but they are deemed to be non-sensitive, so they are eligible for development. And we took advantage of the opportunity, putting in our pitch for utilizing this location for a permanent location in Myers. And this is it's our busiest location currently. This picture here kind of just shows you where the 4 parcels that we're considering or being proposed for this location. It's on the southwest corner of US Highway 50 and California Highway 89, just across the street. And I'll have another slide showing where the existing location is now. So that has led to all of the partners coming together. Certainly TRPA is the designated lead of our federally approved aquatic invasive species management plan, and our long-term amazing partner, the Conservation District, doing implementation, strategizing on exactly what we need at a permanent location. And then with the Conservancy and the opportunity for asset lands and an exciting component with housing, and then the county also providing that experience of dealing with these kinds of projects, but also this housing provides some benefit to them as well. And I'll talk about a little bit about that soon. So that all kind of started to some initial public engagement in the fall of 2024. We proposed the idea to the public, and that has kind of started this process. Next slide, please. So this is, well, that's not super easy to see, but the blue kind of lower middle is our existing location. It is south of Highway 50 on California Highway 89, Pomo Street. That is actually the street that bifurcates Highway 89. So both streets, that street serves as access to both of our locations. So the blue, very small location, and the green, the proposed location that we're talking about today. Next slide. So why do we need a permanent location? This is the initial concept that was drawn up by the consultant NCE in that early stages with the public engagement just to give them a sense of what we're talking about. But a permanent location allows us to be prepared for new threats with golden mussels being at our doorstep just a couple hours away, been described as quagga mussels on steroids, unfortunately. And what that means is basically they grow a lot faster and they can live in a lot more places. And like I said, just a couple hours away, we need to be really vigilant on maintaining we have a long-term sustainable prevention program. So this allows us to have that reliability, not relying on private property owners to lease a space or going through an annual permitting process at our other temporary locations, whether it's the Forest Service permits or agreements with ski resort at Alpine Meadows, which is another location we're operating at. But having that reliability, making sure we're able to quickly adapt the site with any new technology from a decontamination standpoint, and having professional looking environment, better experience for the customer, more educational opportunities. But really one of the critical pieces is that it's safe operations for the staff and the public. On that previous slide, you saw that little blue circle. We only have about room for 2 boats on site to do inspections and decontaminations. The rest of it occurs on the public roadway when we're really, really busy on weekends or holidays. And that's not ideal. So this opportunity is able to most likely have 14 tow boats and tow vehicles and boats on site. So there's no inter traffic, there's no congestion and things like that. This also allows us to save resources. We're not spending time going through a permitting process on an annual basis or going through a setup and breakdown where we have to leave a location because at a Spooner currently we have to totally vacate that location. So this will be ready to go as soon as we need it. And as I mentioned, the opportunity for workforce housing, that's pretty exciting. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Next slide. This is the 30% design. I'll have a larger one to walk you through in a second here, but it considers all of our operational aspects. As I mentioned, having that queuing space off the public roadway. It also incorporates considerations that for the neighbors in that area. We, through this public engagement, having an open house or a public meeting, as I mentioned a year and a half ago, but also a website for the project and an email address for the public to provide feedback, looking at keeping the operations away from the main road, that Pomo Street that kind of separates this from the rest of the neighborhood so that you can see those kind of white structures pushed further away from that roadway. So we're going through the environmental review process. As I mentioned, the draft document, it's a joint triple document that was just released. For TRPA, it's an initial environmental checklist. For CEQA, it is an initial study mitigated negative declaration. And for NEPA, it's an environmental assessment. And while there's no federal action or permitting of any kind from the federal side of things, because we're using federal dollars, there is that nexus. And so we have to go through the NEPA process. Next slide. So here is just an expanded view, that kind of gray on the bottom, kind of going parallel to the bottom of the slide there. Boats would continue to come off of Echo Summit through the roundabout, turning south on California Highway 89, and then turning right onto Pomo Street, and then taking that second ingress on the far left of the slide. And that larger space that you see there in darker gray is where all of the boats and tow vehicles can queue, and inspections can occur there while they're waiting for a decontamination, and also just gaining information from the boat owner as well. And then that white area, in that kind of rounded gray area, is where decontaminations can occur. We can do 2 boats at once, and then still an opportunity for passing through. So you don't have to wait for that decontamination to be completed. If you choose not to boat on Lake Tahoe, or for service vehicles that need to provide any equipment or anything, or sometimes non-motorized inspections are conducted, and we can do those in those locations as well. And then that white rectangle towards the bottom is where the housing would go. It'd be proposed for 6 units. Workforce housing is a critical need in the basin. And so this could provide 6 units, 1.5 story, I forget exactly, but basically parking, there'd be space for a garage, and then the upstairs living, I think is, as you would call it, but nothing more than that. And providing housing for inspection staff during the summer, but also snowplow drivers for providing critical services to the community for the county in the winter time, rather than the county having to rent houses at a very high cost and lacking availability sometimes. So I live in this area, so I know how much snow I get on not this winter, unfortunately, but in winters past. Snowplow is an essential service I definitely rely on. But this is where we are now with a 30% design phase. Because of the initial environmental checklist, this does not require a board action, but because it is a public service project with new coverage, we will be coming back to you in the future at the permitting stage, where the governing board will have to make a decision on this project. Next slide, please. So the public engagement piece, because of the level of environmental review, we don't have to go through a formal scoping process or anything super formal, but we want to make sure the public has every opportunity to provide input. This is a critical aspect of our program, having these permanent locations for the program. So we want to make sure the public has every opportunity. So we're having a second open house on May 4th at the training facility behind the Lake Valley Fire Department. So it'll be on May 4th, and we'll have representatives from TRPA, the county, Tahoe Resource Conservation District, and the Conservancy there to answer any questions that the public may have, and another opportunity to provide public comment on the draft environmental document. Next slide. And beyond that, official written comments can be provided to the address listed here, but also an email address, as I mentioned, we have established. And then today, public comment can also be added to the official public comment for the document. And I think if there's any questions, that's all I got.
Great, thank you so much.
And thank you, Shelley, for sticking around.
Do any committee members have questions or comments?
I do. Thank you for the presentation, and I'm really excited that El Dorado County is involved in this and is helping move this project along. I'm very much in favor of it. I'm wondering, one of the biggest problems that we have in the Myers community is the need for restrooms, public restrooms. That is falling currently on restaurants and grocery stores and people that are stopping not to buy food or anything, but are really stopping to try to find a restroom. So are public restrooms contemplated in this project?
I'm going to look to Thea. I think so, but I can't remember because.
Hi, I'm Thea Graybill for the record. I'm with El Dorado County Planning and Building Department on the long range planning team, but I also wear a second hat and am based in Tahoe and work for the Tahoe Planning and Building Division. And so, yes, there are public restrooms on site included in the 30% design. Therefore, they are currently being analyzed in the environmental document. As far as whether they'll be open year round, I think that's a question that is probably for future discussions with the partners.
Right. Maybe it could be like, I hate to turn it into a visitor center, because really the AIS inspection station is so important. It needs to be isolated we don't want to involve a lot of mixed uses. So yeah, I don't know how that'll play out, but at least knowing that there's restrooms there for the people that are utilizing the service will take a little bit of pressure off of that area in general. So thank you for that. And then I wanted to follow up on a question. I was not able to be at the board to board 2x2 or 4x4 meeting that we do, or 6x6 with the league and TRPA, but I had some one of our board members reach out to me because there was a very good question brought up at that meeting that we wanted to ask here today. And that is when the RCD is doing these inspections, do they also inspect things like accessory things like life jackets, water skis? I mean, we've heard before that maybe some of our contamination came in on boots, that fishermen wear. Are we inspecting all of that?
Yes.
That's great.
That
That was a good answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we know.
We have so the inspection is a very thorough process, both visual and tactile, and looking in compartments for water, evidence of invasive species. Clean, drain, and dry is the mantra. So if it's not any of those things, or if it's not all three of those things, we do a decontamination. And so when they're looking at these lockers, wetsuits, floaties, all that kind of stuff, we have buckets available where they just start soaking while the rest of the decontamination of the boat occurs. So yes. And then one thing, so thank you, Thea, because I don't know how the restroom piece slipped in my mind, but it also reminded me that another aspect that has been incorporated into the design of the project to benefit the community is the existing bike path that goes along Highway 50. This will also include a trail that connects to that. So people using that trail system can also access the restroom.
Any other questions or comments, board members or online? I have one or a couple. As with most of my comments on these new facilities, will there be electric vehicle charging included in the design plans? And is there any solar being added to any of the facilities to offset energy demand?
Those are definitely items being considered, I think, at this stage of the process. That hasn't been at the 30%, certainly down the road that can be, but Thea might have something to add. No. Okay. But definitely on our radar.
Yeah, it seems like with the amount of time that vehicles will spend, there would be a perfect opportunity to charge at the same time. And there are, more trucks coming online and larger vehicles that might be towing that would need to charge up. At the employee housing too.
There'll be some operational aspects that need to be considered because the the tow vehicle needs to stay to move it through the system. So if there's, I don't know, longer hoses, I got decontamination on my mind, but plugs essentially, we'd have to figure that out.
Yeah, I would just strongly encourage you to think about that, just to really maximize people's interest in also doing this. If they get a chance to charge and they get a chance to, use a restroom, maybe there's great signage up too about what we're doing. There's just a great opportunity for education and, enrichment in entering the basin.
Yeah, apologize if I didn't mention that, but there is a educational kiosk that will be incorporated and an area for people to get out of the sun.
Yeah, and potentially just to add, Julie Reagan here, electric boats. I mean, that's a growing area. So I think all of that will be under consideration.
Well, what is the average amount of time? I'm sorry, what is the average amount of time that somebody coming in with their vessel might spend at this station getting through the decontamination process?
Certainly we encourage reservations to have more of an on-demand or, a set time, but we will still have that on-demand component. It depends. The complexity of boats is getting more and more so on each year. I mean, my wife and I struggle with just figuring out how our car works sometimes. So boats are doing the same thing. But not only from a technology standpoint, but just how big they are. The ballast tanks are becoming much, much more popular with wakeboarding. So that takes more time. And now that we have mandatory decontaminations, we're decontaminating every boat. So, an hour is probably the longest because of all the ballast tanks that need to be decontaminated with hot water. If I didn't mention that, that's what we use to decontaminate boats, about 120 to 140 degrees. But if it's a simple boat, 15 minutes.
With the right level charger, that could actually make a difference. So it's useful. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions from committee members?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. And Brooke asked, thank you for following up on that, Brooke. The board to board question I think was a good one. And thanks for asking it. Thanks for the answer. It could absolutely be listening error here. But I think part of what the league raised, which I think is a good point, is if you're coming into Tahoe and you don't have a boat, but let's say you went fishing or you have a paddleboard or you're not entering via boat in the lake, is there still a way to decontaminate those things?
Yes.
Cool. Still, yeah. Okay, great. Sorry. My bad. Listening error.
And Tom is going to be talking about the outreach strategy, but also some non-motorized components. With the discovery of New Zealand mud snails a few years ago, we really ramped up, and even more so with golden mussel, the non-motorized component with rovers, enhancing the Tahoe Keepers program. Non-motorized are subject to inspections. So if any of the RCD staff or the roving staff, which are also trained inspectors, or any location or any location manager like a beach or a launch facility, they have the right, or we have the authority, they have the right to say, you can't launch here, you need to get inspected. So that becomes mandatory at that point. So we do, and last year I think we had a lot more non-motorized craft and angling come through our stations for that inspection and decontamination. And just on a side note, we were awarded funds through the Tahoe Fund to provide opportunities for anglers to become clean, drain, and dry at places like Marlette Lake, Spooner Lake, where there's tools for them to become clean, drain, and dry.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Hopefully you feel like you've got some feedback from us and some direction. Great. Okay. Well, then thank you so much, Dennis. And that will bring us to agenda item 5.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. 5B, and that's aquatic invasive species outreach and education. So information on this item can be found on page 163. And let's see, Tom is here because Mackenzie is out sick. So thank you so much, Tom.
There. Good afternoon. Yes, I am sitting in for Mackenzie. I'm Tom Booz and I run the Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Program that Dennis just talked a lot about. And this is going to be fun. The Aquatic Invasive Species Outreach Program has grown a lot in a couple of years, and a large part of that is due to the TRPA's assistance in helping us hire Mackenzie as a full-time staff person. It used to be a seasonal position with the RCD. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is a direct result of her hard work and dedication. Oops, next slide, please. Yeah. So Dennis mentioned the New Zealand mud snails. Here's a picture of it on the left. They're all sitting on the bed of the lake and entangled in a algal mat. And then on the right, I have show and tell. Isn't that exciting? For those of you not in the room, this is an artificial substrate, which is a picture of the golden mussels on the right. That is what an infestation of golden mussels looks like. We have these plunked around the lake at 7 or 8 different locations, which is meant to be an early detection device if we look for mussels and other things on these. So that's what it could look like. Thankfully, we haven't found any here yet. As Dennis mentioned, the discovery of the mud snails really highlighted the fact that we needed to do more and be better about our education when it comes to the non-motorized and the angling community. So that's primarily why we've ramped up as much as we have. And suddenly, with the golden mussel threat, you could paddle in the San Joaquin Delta in the morning and come up here for a sunset paddle, which is a huge risk to the lake. So the outreach program has 4 goals. Next slide, please. The first one is to increase awareness of the threat to help people understand why we are doing our program and how they can be clean, drain, dry, and the importance of that. To maintain consistent messaging, we have a lot of different audiences, and Dennis just described that. There's anglers, non-motorized paddleboarders, kayaks, the electric toys, and then obviously the motorized watercraft. There's a lot of different people that we need to reach out to, and that consistent message is really important because they could hear it in many different ways. And we also want to activate all of our platforms, which I'll get into. And lastly, taking action to prevent the spread. And that's the clean, drain, dry, changing behavior so people understand how they can be a part of this community to protect the lake. Hi. Next, please. So I'm going to run through 10 different tactics that took place in 2025, and then I have some results. So the first one is the coordinated messaging. The clean, drain, dry mantra has been around for quite a while, and we decided with the golden mussels that we wanted to be a little bit more active. So stop golden mussels, clean your gear. This is a picture of a billboard. We had 6 billboards put around towards incoming highways. This one was on Highway 50. There were some in Reno and then around the Sacramento area. We also did 9 publication ads with the same messaging. Other messages that we use, the clean, drain, dry, stop golden mussels, the clean your gear, but also just don't move a mussel. That's a federal campaign that's been around for, gosh, 20 years or so since the mussels moved to the west. Partnerships are absolutely critical to what we do here with our outreach group at TRPA. And you can see a list of some of the partners here. The Tahoe Resource Conservation District implements the motorized watercraft inspection program, but they also have rovers that they supervise, and I'll get into that in more detail. Keep Tahoe Blue has been a great partner. They have the Eyes on the Lake, which is citizen science, get people going out and looking for aquatic invasive species. I'll get into that a little bit more. The Tahoe Fund helped print or funded us to print new boating maps, which we hand out at the inspection stations. It gives people information where you can go to the bathroom, where you can get gas, natural resource features and the lake. And the Clean Up the Lake has done an AIS toolkit to help with identification for professionals and recreational divers that are in the lake. It's very much focused to what it would look like underneath the water. UC Davis Tahoe Environmental Research Center created this really, really great interactive exhibit. You can see there's things that you can inspect, physical things, but there's also a really great interactive app. And they get about 10,000 visitors there. So there's going to reach a lot of people. We also we're going to put this at our Meyer station in our educational center that we have now, so people can poke around with it while they're waiting. So we're really excited to see what the results that we get from that. And then lastly, with the beach concessionaires, primarily with the Forest Service and California State Parks, we train their people to screen non-motorized boats as visitors are coming into the beaches. Screen them for risk. And if they are deemed to be high risk, we send them to the station where they're expedited with a free decontamination. This one was really a huge success this last year. We partnered with the Eyes on the Lake for a chance to win. So if you submitted a report for Eyes on the Lake or became a Tahoe keeper, you were entered into an opportunity to win. We had drawing each month and then the grand prize at the end. I believe it was Blue Zone that donated a paddleboard, which was the grand prize at the end of the season. So this really got a lot of excitement going within the paddling community. Next, please. The rovers. This is, again, really, really exciting. So after the discovery of the New Zealand mud snails and that gap that I mentioned about reaching the non-motorized people, we decided that we needed people to meet them at the site because we can't reach them at our stations if they don't come there because they're subject to inspection. So we hired 2 in 2024. We had 4 last year. They visited 30 beaches, 17,000 interactions. That is 17,000 people that we did not reach the year before. So that's a huge number. It's highly, highly successful. It's a ton of work. These people are incredible stewards and they're partnering. So 10,000 watercraft were inspected by these folks. 78 of them were deemed to be high risk and sent to the inspection stations. And the e-foils are a motorized boat that should be inspected, but you can just throw it over your shoulder and walk to the beach. So we're really pushing that level of education to let people know that those need to be inspected. And we have a separate program to help expedite that because we don't want to have a heavy hand on that. We want to encourage people to do the right thing and comply with our rules. And again, the rovers work hard. I'm going to share this. It's off script, but one of our inspectors from 2024 decided to be a rover, and he's fantastic. He's just a super friendly person. We asked him what job is harder, inspector or rover, and he said hands down a rover, because they seek people out. They comb the beaches. If there's no one there, they go to the next beach and they just try to talk to as many people as possible. So it's exhausting, but they were really, really good. Along with this, Laura Patton mentioned this, the Keep Tahoe Blue is going to have a subsidiary group of our rovers going to the beaches and just educating people in concert with what the rovers are doing. Next, please. We also have these CD3 machines. These are self-use things that are waterless. They're free. They're solar powered. They have a air compressor and a hose on them. And they're one's at Sand Harbor, paid through the Nevada Division of State Lands. The Tahoe Keys have one. Meeks Bay has one that's sitting there permanently throughout the summer. That's paid through infrastructure funds. And then the Keep Tahoe Blue purchased one that we move around from site to site throughout the summer. It's currently out at the Elks Club, put into the Truckee River if you want to go check it out. They're really, really neat. They're a great outreach tool, as well as a practical tool to become clean, drain, dry. And this quote sums it up. The presence of the machine emphasized that the threat of invasives was real. Someone emailed that to us, which is really, really nice to hear. Signs, we really went crazy on putting signs up last year. So we clean, drain, dry, do you. 113 of them were put up around the lake. There's still 49 that need to be installed. We're working with the landowners. The whole goal of this is to grab people's attention. You can see the little images that are a little bit blurry. They're people doing things on the water. And the hope is that the kids see that they recognize themselves in that picture, and they see we clean, drain, dry, hit the QR code to learn how they can be a better steward of the lake. And you can see the map on the right is where all the signs are. We have a lot of signs up at Fallen Leaf Lake. So on the motorized side of things, thank you. On the motorized side of things, with the discovery of the golden mussels in 2025, we were absolutely in reaction mode. And we decided, the board approved us to do mandatory decontaminations for every motorized watercraft, which is a big deviation from where we have been in the past. And our decontamination fee structure last year was just a little bit too complicated and for implementation and confusing to the public. So we really simplified it, and we really wanted to incentivize people to arrive clean, drain, dry. Even though we're going to do a decontamination, if they're clean, drain, dry, it's a much simpler process. So we offer a 50% discount for those boats that arrive clean, drain, dry. And I'm really excited to see how this shakes out from a percentage of boats that arrive clean, drain, dry. So just to really incentivize that behavior change. We really, really ramped up our social media presence for leveraging short form videos, collaborative posts with all the partners across the basin and even beyond. We're working with REI in some instances through their social media platform, influencers, and just basic calls to action, because everything that we do here is based on changing behavior. We had a lot more Tahoe Keepers Instagram gained 700 followers since July of 2024, which is about double of what it was before Mackenzie started. So she is highly, highly successful and skilled at doing these. I recommend going there and just look at some of the posts, because they're fun, informative, and interesting with amazing photos. Oops. Next on the list is events. We attended 27 events, interacting with 2,700 people. We attended 2 statewide webinars, or put on one of them and attended another one to address the golden mussel threat. And then we attended and presented and tabled at 2 separate international conferences, when one of them was right here in Lake Tahoe last fall. Oh, this is the big one. I don't like this many words on a slide, but it was too many to yeah. So the marketing aspect of our outreach was robust, as it says here. I mean, like we 100-fold from what we've done in the past. Direct mailers to 96,000 boaters, an email news that goes out to 15,000 recipients, 7,000 boating app downloads. A boating app is about safety and where the no wake zone is and AIS and where you can go to the bathroom and get gas and food and things like that. The billboards that I mentioned, the Tahoe in-depth articles, every Tahoe in-depth article has stories about AIS, updated print materials, lots of TV interviews, print advertisements, podcast advertisements, and modernizing our website. That is really important because we direct everybody to our website. We want it to be modern and simple and efficient. Oops. Now the results. This is the fun part, please. Next. So in 2025, we had 830 Tahoe keepers join that program. That's the non-motorized community, empowering them to be clean, drain, dry every time they paddle. You can see that spike in 2025, and that is all related to Mackenzie's hard work and the Keep Tahoe Blues team's work and that opportunity to win a prize. People like free things. It's that simple. And it's gonna happen again this year. We're really excited to see those numbers from in 2026. And then going back to the success of our outreach, on the motorized side of things, 60% of the boats arrived to the stations last year clean, drain, and dry. It's up, like our average has been anywhere from 48 to 52, 53 for the last 15 years. We're at 60%. So tells us that it's working. Yes, sorry, the 830 are new Tahoe keepers that joined last year. So when we interact with Tahoe keepers, we ask them how they heard about it. And you can see the two graphs look very, very different between 2024 and 2025. And again, that's the outreach team's efforts showing how people are hearing about us. The website, again, we steer people there as much as possible, a huge increase there. Look at the word of mouth, the second bar, 25 to 130. That's a big, big jump. The rovers is the staff that's listed there. Again, that's a really big jump. And I want to highlight the signs. In 2024, it's the bottom one on the right, and then this third from the bottom on the left. Signs went from 2 people saying to 20. And that was after that first year of getting those signs out here on the landscape. So we're really excited about that number climbing over time as people interact with those signs. And that's what I have. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That's great progress. Any committee member questions or comments? And online too. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to thank you and for your enthusiasm and for giving Mackenzie so many kudos because she probably wouldn't have given herself those. So great, great presentation given the fact that you just jumped right in. But I hear it out there in the community. I hear the chatter about the Keepers program in particular, because I think in the beginning, that was something that was kind of getting out onto the water that we weren't really paying attention to. There's so many also locals, that paddle or kayak, and they're really getting this program out there to their friends. But also when you arrive at Nevada State Beach and you pull up next to a car that's unloading their watercraft, you automatically say, hey, where are you from? Do you know? So just a great job.
I appreciate that. And I will add, when we put the CD3 machine out at Elks Club, we also have our rovers there on busy weekends if it's 70 degrees, which I don't see that happening anytime soon. But that's our opportunity to reach the locals for that exact reason, because they can help educate others because they're out across the landscape. So our roving inspector program is growing by educating those locals there.
Thanks. And Wes, it looks like you've got your hand raised if you'd like to make a comment.
Since you don't say anything unless I have something to say. So I'm curious, has there been any thought of teaming up with the LTVA or the TDVA to get this message out in some of their advertisements they have regarding Lake Tahoe?
I don't know what LTVA is.
Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority and Tahoe Douglas Visitors Authority, the owners of the new event center.
Thank you, Board Member Rice. This is Julie Reagan, Director here. Thanks for the question. Yes, we coordinate with LTVA, the Visitors Authority, on a number of issues, this being one, through destination stewardship and the leadership. You know, Carol Chaplin was the first co-chair of the council. And so they've been pushing out messages. It's really one of their rules to lake by in the campaign and know before you go. We've coordinated with the Visitors Authority here on the South Shore, plus the Community Alliance on the North Shore, and Travel Nevada and Incline Village. So all of the Visitors Authorities are pushing out those messages, particularly with the new threat of the golden mussel, and also helping sponsor billboards and coordinating on that level.
I thought so, but I thought I'd ask anyway.
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question, and it's on Mackenzie's large list of things to do. And we have a video that we want to have kind of on a running thing at lodging facilities. When you walk into the lobby, we just haven't quite had the time to finalize that. And then on another standpoint, we're working with all the different land managers in the basin to make sure. So like when you want to come camping to Tahoe, you logically go to Forest Service or that entity's website, and the information on those websites isn't as clear as we want it to be from an AIS perspective. So we're working on getting that language updated, again, reflecting that consistent messaging. So every time someone is figuring out where to go in Tahoe, they get that same message. Great question. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments in the room or online from committee members? I'll just add that, first of all, thanks. This is great. I saw lots of the signs around Sacramento, Reno, at the beaches. It was really great. I interacted with a rover last summer at Pope Beach and really enjoyed having that experience too. I just wanted to suggest that maybe we do a truncated version of this to the full board as the weather heats up too, so that we just remind board members to be a part of the solution as well, and maybe get some Tahoe keeper engagement at that point too. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, that was just an informational item, so we can move on to the next. Thank you so much, Tom, and please send our best to Mackenzie for her great work.
I will do just that. Thank you.
Thanks. So we're up to agenda item 5C, and this is threshold update priorities. Information on this item can be found on page 165. Now I'll turn this over to Dan Segan to present the item. Thank you.
Hi, on. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Dan Segan, TRPA. It's my pleasure to talk to you today about our proposal for the next round of threshold updates for our next year's work plan. Next slide, please. And when we were preparing for this, we decided to go into the Wayback Machine, in part to welcome Vince, but also because we were reminding ourselves of where we have been with this initiative overall. So we pulled this slide from a 2017 presentation. We've been at this threshold update thing a long time, but with good reason. And it clearly laid out what we were trying to do. So most of our standards were adopted in 1982, right after the compact was amended to include this notion of a threshold standard. And we hadn't really changed those standards since their adoption. And so many of those standards, the science that underpinned them had aged, the priorities of the agency had changed, and we needed to do a fair amount of work to revise those standards to provide you with the information that you need to better manage the basin, and also to align with the targets of today. Next slide, please. So we realized that we had a lot of work to do. So we engaged with the Tahoe Science Advisory Council on an assessment of how much work we actually had to do to modernize these standards that we had. And we arrived at this, many of you may remember it, at least two of you sitting here were on the board at this time, the SMART criteria that we would assess all of our standards against. So are they specific, measurable? Can they be attributed to actions that the agency is taking? Are they relevant to the priorities of today, and are they time bound? Next slide, please. The findings of that assessment were not very encouraging for the standards at the time. We found that less than 40% were specific and measurable, and less than 30% were specific, measurable, and grounded in the latest science. So we recognize that we had a lot of work to do. But I want you to take note both of the number of standards that you see there, as well as the percentage of each that hit these milestones for how well we're doing. So you're looking at 178 standards at the time, and again, less than 40% specific and measurable, and less than 30% specific and measurable and grounded in the latest science. Next slide, please. So after that assessment came back in a less than favorable state for our standards, which was no surprise to anyone in this room. We all knew we had work to do. The board set out a series or a work plan to address that. And since that time, this board has taken 5 specific actions related to those standards. So we had 2 rounds of technical cleanup in 2018 and 2019. We adopted a new VMT standard for sustainable communities and transportation in 2021. We adopted new goals for 3 different acronym-based standards in 2024. That's our aquatic invasive species standards, stream environment zones, which are wetlands for the uninitiated, and Tahoe yellowcrest. So we incorporated a suite of new science to inform each of those. And then most recently, we adopted modifications to our forest health standards and water quality standards. So as we sit here today, looking back over the last 8 years of work, we now have 111 standards, not 178 standards. And 61 of those we've completed that initial environmental review on. So we think they're grounded in science, they are specific, and they are measurable. So we've made a fair bit of progress. Tracy's prompting me to go to the next slide because maybe I'm already giving away the proposal here. So if you're doing the math in your own head, that leaves us with 50 standards that don't live up to the goals that we have set for those standards, being specific, measurable, outcome-based, and focused on the things that we really care about. Next slide, please. And those 50 standards fall into 3 broad categories that we think should be the focus of the next round of the Threshold Update Initiative work. So we have recreation standards within there. We have standards related to biodiversity, and then continued work on the technical review of our standards and bringing them back up to practice. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those individually. So our recreation standards are our last 2 policy statements. So policy statements, for those of you that remember the history of the threshold standards, were guidance to the governing board in the development of the regional plan. So the initial round of threshold standards were adopted before the first regional plan that wasn't litigated, before the 1987 regional plan. And so when the standards were adopted, they were providing guidance to the governing board to what they wanted to see in that plan. The conversation we've had since related to policy statements is that you'll see they're just general guidance for things that we would like to see. They are not specific and measurable outcomes. And that becomes a challenge for us as an agency because we also have a requirement to produce a threshold evaluation every 4 years in which we state how well we are doing on each of these. And we would like that evaluation to be objective in nature. We want fine lines to say, yes, we have achieved this goal. No, we have not. And this is how far we have to be. And the challenge with policy statements is because they include no specific or measurable criteria, they are very hard to evaluate in that objective manner. Next slide, please. Luckily, the 2 recreation standards, like all of our standards, are not goals just for the agency to achieve. They're goals for the entire partnership to achieve. And it's no secret to anyone in this room that recreation has been a large focus of the environmental improvement program for the last couple years. And there is specifically a recreation working group that includes all of the partners on the screen that you see there listed, who's working on new specific and measurable criteria to ensure that our recreation sites are indeed sustainable recreation sites. And they are developing those criteria. We have also recently received grants from the California Tahoe Conservancy and the Nevada Division of State Lands, augmented by general funds contributed by TRPA, where we have agreed as a group to bring on experts in the field of sustainable recreation to help us develop those specific and measurable criteria for our recreation sites. And people often ask, what does that mean? And what it means is we would say things like, we want all beach access points to have a restroom or ADA access, depending on the type of experience that we're providing at those individual recreation sites. So they'll work through that process. We'll be bringing you frequent updates on how we are progressing through this and what type of criteria they're developing. The consultant's work plan is going to include running a workshop for the entire governing board that'll allow each of you to provide feedback on, are these the things we really should be considering in a sustainable recreation site? So that's the recreation update. Next slide, please. The second is our biodiversity proposed update to what we're calling our biodiversity categories. So I realize now, seeing you squint, that this slide is a little bit hard to read, but I'll jump right to the conclusion. So we currently have 6 targets for individual species within our threshold standards, and they're all birds. And if you're grounding yourself in the time of 1980, so especially birds, especially raptor populations, had been decimated by DDT across much of the country. And as DDT was phased out of its use, we've seen raptor populations respond in accordance, and they've gained traction. And many of our standards today, specifically for osprey or bald eagle populations, were well in excess of where we want to be. But as an agency overall, and one of the things that was highlighted when we were updating our forest health and our water quality standards is that we don't define healthy forest just by the composition of the trees. We define the healthy forest based on the ecosystem that it supports. And we care more about just supporting an ecosystem that contains 6 raptor species. And so what we're proposing is to, next slide, please. Sorry, we called biodiversity beyond birds on this slide, because I think our interests really are beyond birds. And one of the things we really heard from the peer review of the forest health thresholds is that we need to look broader. We need to think about the entire realm of biodiversity. Means biologic diversity, which is really all of the species that the landscape supports. And we have started work with the Biological Interagency Working Group, which is the working group that deals basically with species and species monitoring within the region and coordinates those activities. A subset of that group has offered to do more detailed work with us on updating these standards for biodiversity within our region. And again, we'll bring forward that proposal in increments to you as we go along. Next slide, please. So the last is probably the least sexy of the proposals to include in our work plan. But as Keep Tahoe Blue highlighted in their comments, that doesn't mean that it's any less important. And this slide itself also dates back to 8 years ago when we started this work. And we had really outlined 2 priorities: administrative cleanup of our standards and substantive review work around the individual content. So the recreation work and the biodiversity work really fall into that substantive review work. But the latter work, the ensuring that all of these standards are specific and measurable, is just as important. And we identified a little over 30 standards that wouldn't be covered in the substantive review of the 2 categories that we also think should be updated by the next threshold evaluation. Next slide, please. And what does that mean? So for those uninitiated with our system, if you're placing yourselves again back in 1980 and we don't have an adopted regional plan, there was a suite of standards that were initiated or that were adopted at the time that were flagged as management standards or policy statements. And these are those standards that don't have a specific and measurable outcome or a defined baseline. They were just directions for the agency to do things like reduce pollutant load. And this was flagged, if you remember, in the comments that we received both in public and by the peer reviewers of our last threshold evaluation of the intent of these standards is great, but it would be great if they also lived up to the goals and the aspirations that we've adopted for our threshold standards within our regional plan, meaning that they need to be specific and measurable. And so you can see at the time of the last evaluation, there was just under 60 of those standards that fell into these two categories where we couldn't reach a status determination on them. We have a little over 30 right now because of the work we've already done within the water quality and forest health space. And we're proposing to update all of those by the next threshold evaluation as well. Next slide, please. Sorry, I just spoke through the slide was intended to provide additional background as to why we have standards that are not specific and measurable, especially if you are grounded in the state systems for things like water quality. They generally set water quality standards with a specific and measurable target, and we're somewhat unique in that we have standards that still don't have that end objective in mind. And those fall into those two categories, categories 2 and 3, management standards and policy statements. And those will be the subject of this technical review and update. Next slide, please. So the next slide was going to be a timeline, but that timeline is coming soon. We're proposing an endpoint for that timeline of the end of 2027, and pending the direction that you give us after this presentation, we will be developing that timeline as part of our 26-27 work plan with the intent that all of those updates would be completed by the end of 2027. Thank you for the time, and I welcome any questions.
Thanks so much, Dan. Any committee member comments or questions, both in the room and online? Oh, I'll jump in. First of all, thanks so much. That was great. And, you know, as we discussed when we were prepping for this I just think that the biodiversity work is going to be challenging and interesting. And I think something with potentially a lot of back and forth. I think about the pika that, you know, we used to see a lot more readily in the area, and now we barely see anymore. So as the climate changes, as the environment changes, right, like trying to pick thresholds that allow us to understand the work that we're able to do and the work that, no matter how hard we try, may not produce the results that we're looking for because of climate change. So, you know, it would be great to get the Science Advisory Council to think about like thresholds that address some of changes or changing demands for different habitat. So, you know, as we go up the slope, habitat decreases because we lose space. What does that do to the species we're tracking? And climate change and how that all interacts. The other thing I'd say is that, you know, there might be an opportunity to just pick like umbrella species or keystone species to track versus many of them, so that you get an example of, you know, some indicator species for how the area is doing as a whole. And so I would encourage the Science Advisory Council to look at some of those too.
Appreciate the comments. And I should have added during the presentation, we've engaged with the Science Advisory Council on all 3 of these focus areas, specifically within the biodiversity threshold update. They've agreed to play 2 roles. One is what they call an engaged review, which is really, they've embedded a couple people on part of our project team to have those discussions as we go along about what's the best way to measure the health of the forest overall and the community overall. So that's one role they're playing. The second is they've agreed to play the independent peer review role, which means at the end of the process, bringing in external reviewers to say, this is what we've gotten right, this is what we've gotten wrong, and we would suggest these modifications before you adopt these standards.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Julie Reagan here from TRPA's Executive Director seat. Just a couple things to mention and to thank. Great presentation from Dan Segan, our Chief Science and Policy Officer. And I also really wanted to thank the folks in the back of the room. Raise your hand, science and data team. Yeah, they are the ones out there measuring the bugs in the streams and doing all the monitoring and the analysis, GIS work, technology, work in the field with partners, with people like the Forest Service who have all the land, and the states of California and Nevada. So just a tremendous amount of work goes into this. I didn't want to miss that one. And also just to connect the dots, because from the earlier presentation on planning and permitting, when our staff do what's called that initial environmental checklist, it'll be in your packet. You'll see all of the consideration that a planner has to make sure that a project that's approved and move forward doesn't adversely affect any of our environmental threshold standards. So if our threshold standards aren't based on current science and keeping up with the latest issues, it puts a big spotlight on what we're doing at the permitting level, in addition, to the long range planning out for the future. So we're eager, to get this done, and we appreciate the board support and your direction in previous retreats to focus on it. And I think we've made a ton of good progress just in the last few years. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank Rodney from ExecuShield Security. Thank you for being here. Rodney is going to be helping us with our board security. And we didn't mention it in the full board. I sent you all a note. But since this is his first meeting, wanted to give you a warm welcome. Thank you. Thank you. And we had, not a lot of activity in terms of crazy public comment. So we just think his mere presence is making us feel safe and letting the public know that we're a safe space if they want to come and participate to feel safe in doing so. Our safety and security is certainly important for you as well as our staff and the public. So thanks, Rodney, for being here. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So if we have no other comments or questions, then I'll entertain the motion, which is up on the screen there. In order for the motion to pass, we need an affirmative vote of a majority of the quorum present. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I would go ahead and move that we recommend the proposed threshold update priorities for the 26-27 work plan as presented in the staff summary.
Great. We have a motion. Any discussion? Comments or questions? Okay, Maria, could you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Mr. Guthrow,
Yes.
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Mr. Rice,
Yes.
Ms. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Faustinos, Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Madam Chair, and motion passes.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much, Dan. And we can move on now to committee member comments. This is agenda item 6. Any comments or questions from committee members as a whole? Okay. Seeing none, our final matter of business is our general public interest comment period. Any member of the public wishing to address the Environmental Improvement Program Committee on any item listed or not listed on the agenda may do so at this time. Individuals or groups who have already commented on items listed on the agenda are not permitted to comment on that same topic. If any member of the public wishes to speak at this time, please raise your hand now, either in person by clicking raise hand at the bottom of your Zoom screen or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you'll be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member.
Madam Chair, there are no hands raised online or in the room to comment.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So we can close the public comment period. Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, wait. Oh, was that Wes? Okay, great. Okay. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion passes. We are adjourned at 1:01 p.m. Thank you.
Vince, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, I just wanted to say welcome aboard if I'm talking to the right Vince.
You are talking to the right Vince.
Okay, Vince, for those that didn't know, Vince has been part of the NACO for a very long time. And it's good to see you here on the board. The governor made a good choice.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.